Alright, so in the previous lecture we discussed how to create multiple graphs in a figure. But I know what you're thinking. This is great, okay? The dimensions are working perfect. If you do 2 by 1, it'll create two graphs, one on top of the other. But what if we only want 3 graphs? I mean, based on my observations, if we do 2, 2, that's going to create 4 slots. What happens then? Well, let's go ahead and try it out and you'll see for yourself. So we had graph 2. Again, I'm sorry guys, you're going to have to copy paste. So Command C, Command V, and go ahead and change, where was I? Here, okay. So starting from here, change all of them to 3 again. There's probably a faster way by Command F and searching for all the 2s and replacing them with 3s, but that's fine. I can do some manual work. So these are all graph 3s. Yes, okay. And now what we have to do is go ahead and change all of the fig.add subplots to be 2, 2. Okay? So this is 2, 2. This is 2, 2. And this is 2, 2, 3. So remember, this is the third graph we're talking about. And that's it. So by doing so, we have created a 2 by 2 dimension of graphs. We have graph 1 as our first graph, graph 2 as our second graph, and graph 3 as our third graph. Okay, so everything else looks correct. One last thing we should do is change the values to x3, y3, and change the color to, orange. Okay, so graph 3 is equal to fig.add subplot 2, 2, 3. Graph 3.plot x3, y3, orange. Alright, so save this F5 and I'll now show you how creating these graphs work. Okay, so we have this extra space now, and you're probably wondering, well, okay, this looks good. So we've created a 2 by 2 dimension, we filled it up with 3 graphs, but suppose I only want 3 graphs to show up. I don't want this extra space inside of my graph. I mean, that might be an issue you might have. You want one graph to be super long, cover the entire space, and then you want 2 smaller graphs to maybe display some other smaller information. So the way you can do this is by just changing up one number. Basically, when you create a 2 by 2 dimension, the module creates 4 spots in your figure. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's exactly what it's done over here. So this is spot 1, this is spot 2, this is spot 3, and this is spot 4. However, suppose we're talking about this graph. Right now, for this graph, the orange graph, we have it set as 2, 2, 3. So basically we're saying in a 2 by 2 dimension, okay, that gives us 4 spots, I want this graph to be at the third spot, okay? So hopefully you're understanding how this placement of graphs work. Basically, multiply these 2 numbers together, that gives you the number of spaces inside of the graph, and then you just specify which number it should be. So in a 2 by 2 graph, which gives us 4 spaces, you have put it at the third position, which is this one. Now, the goal is right now to extend this graph all the way to our right. So make it to the width of our yellow graph. So going back to the 2 by 1. What does a 2 by 1 say? 2 by 1 says I want to create 2 graphs, and the dimension is obviously gives us 2 spaces, one at the top and one at the bottom. So what is the bottom's number? Well, if the top's number is 1, the bottom's number will be 2. So go ahead and try that out. Say subplot 2, 1, 2. So basically what that's saying is think of this top part as one graph and this bottom part as the second graph. Okay? So save this F5, and now if you take a look, you're going to see our third graph has completely expanded to the edge of our screen. Pretty neat, right? So let me just make this down. Awesome. So over here now you can take a look. We learned that by changing up the dimensions, you don't have to make the dimensions same for each graph. All we did is we specified graph 3 to take up the full space at the bottom by making it think that it's a 2 by 1 dimension of a graph. So by specifying 2, 1, that graph will now take up the whole bottom space. So that's it for this lecture, guys. One last thing actually before I end it. So taking a look at this, what I want you to do is open up our, not Zoom, but this one, the subplot configuration tool. And I quickly want to show you how this width space and height space work. So seeing this, the width space over here, try is expanding this See, that's what it does. So if you want your graph to be a little neat, in case you're conserved with space, if you're working on a small screen and your graph is looking a bit scrunched up, what you can do is you can make your W space a bit greater, give it some gapping between the graphs, and then you can increase your horizontal space so that the random graph and the X and Y axis don't get interfered. Currently, right now, our numbers are being hidden by the random graph. Just expand the horizontal space or the height space a little bit, and that will give us some nice gap. Anyways, awesome job, guys. We learned quite a lot in this lecture. Let's quickly recap. So we learned about how to add multiple graphs in a setting, in a figure. We learned how to use our dimensions to specify where the graph should go. We learned that we don't have to use the exact same dimensions for each graph. If you want one graph to extend all the way, you don't want it to be in one specific place, then you can use different dimensions to get your specific outcome. Alright? Last but not least, we learned how the height space and the width space works. So, terrific job. Again, if you have any questions whatsoever in the past lectures or in this lecture, if you're a bit confused on something, if you're not getting it, please do ask the question. I want this course to be an open course. I want people to ask questions, be friendly, stuff like that. But that's it from my side. Alright, so I'll see you in the next lecture and have a fantastic day.